You should be looking at my outline on the screen here today. I guess a couple of background things before we get started. This is an application where we work with a third party called OnCenter Software, who makes the program on-screen takeoff. So we're actually integrating Electrical Bid Manager with on-screen takeoff to do the electronic takeoff portion of the job. It integrates with EBM, so you don't have to manually transfer the numbers or do any of the, it's all integrated, so it's pretty seamless. But it is two separate programs. The other thing to keep in mind here today is I'm going to present this on one screen. That's really the only feasible way to do it on the internet, but it's really designed for a two-monitor system. So you kind of just have to envision that as I toggle back and forth between the programs. You would normally have two screens set up, and you just move your mouse from the screen that has EBM to the screen that has the on-screen takeoff, and it's really a pretty nice little way to do things. Okay, so this webinar is also going to be divided into two parts. The first part is just to go through the setup, the things you need to know how to set up the two programs to work together, and then I'll actually go back and create a real job and do a takeoff, some sample takeoff, and show you how it all works. So the first part of the webinar is just about setup. It's things you won't be doing after you get that part of it done. So let me turn it. Yeah, we'll leave Epic on for now, but I want to, here's the main screen in EBM, of course. So to start a job that you're going to do electronic takeoff on, you just create it like you do in EBM normally. You give the job a name. I'm just going to call it OST setup. And nothing else in this screen matters, so you just hit OK. So what you do to link EBM, the job in EBM to the on-screen takeoff is you go down to Tools, you hit Export to on-screen takeoff on the toolbar over here. We'll talk about this little window later. For now, you'll just hit OK. And the first time you open up this split screen here, there'll be nothing on the left. So basically, you have an option to create your own export of the things, the assemblies mainly, that you're going to export to every job on a job-by-job basis. You can always add things when you're in the job that aren't on this list. So one way it would be to just maybe take all the assemblies, you hit Add here, maybe all the miscellaneous items, Add here. Or my recommendation would actually be to utilize the one that we've already got set up here. I think this is a really good starting point. If you come over here and hit Load, and you scroll down, there's one called EBM OST Export. That'll give you a nice setup with a good selection of the categories of assemblies and items that you would typically use for commercial bids. Now, the export also includes the saved assemblies, the ones that are tied to the different takeoff modules. I'll go back and show you those in just a second. For now, we're going to hit Export, and you just hit OK here. Now, at this point, OST needs to be closed. Now, I think I've got it open down here, so I'm going to close it. I'm going to hit OK. And then when this window comes up, if it doesn't say EBM 2018 jobs, you need to either type that in or scroll down or up to find it. Otherwise, you can just hit Save. See how it's doing the save screens? Those are the saved assemblies. It's putting those over there first. All of them are automatically exported. You don't have to tell it which ones to export or not export. And then we're going to hit OK here. So just a quick little detour here. The saved assemblies are the ones you see in the different takeoff modules. For example, under branch circuits, at the top you see saved assemblies. It's this list here. In fixtures, for example, it's the list under saved assemblies up at the top. All of these are exported automatically. Whatever you have in those windows is automatically going to be taken into the job. So now what we do is we open up the job in on-screen takeoff. Now I've got on-screen takeoff in my taskbar down here at the bottom. So all I have to do is click on it. So this is the screen you're going to see in OST the first time you open it up. You need to look down here at the bottom where it says TKO. If it doesn't say TKO, that means that you need to go up here to File and check your authorization and put your code numbers in. The other thing I forgot to mention on the EBM side is if you don't have the Pro version, you will need to put some codes into the system, which may even require a purchase of the integration if you haven't done that already. Those codes are entered under Help and Enter Unlock Codes. So this has to be done on the phone with one of our tech support people. You're going to call in to the 800 number that's listed here. They're going to ask you for the machine ID, and then they're going to give you a feature unlock code that will unlock the integration with on-screen takeoff. If you have the Pro version, it's automatically integrated. You don't have to do that. Okay, so I'm toggling back into on-screen takeoff. Don't know why I'm having a hard time seeing that down here. There it is. So the first thing to do here is to go to File and Open. These two databases that are checked here are databases that come with OST. They just have some very general, you can see roofing and concrete and carpentry samples. You're going to uncheck those, and you're going to check the one that says EBM 2018 jobs. And then you just hit OK at the top. And there's the job I just exported from EBM, imported to OST. Now, we're going to double click on that. So there's three parts of the screen here that you're going to navigate around. This is called the condition window. You can see it's got your EBM database with your assemblies we just exported. We'll come back and work on that quite a bit. This is called the pan window. You'll see how that works in a minute. This is called the image window. This is where the drawings will be. So again, setup-wise, if you open up EBM database, go to assemblies, come down here to receptacles. First thing I would do is widen this left part of the screen by just dragging the edge of the window over. Depending on the resolution of your screen, you may have to go a certain amount of distance, but you'll see that how that works. If I go to Duplex here, this little heading for description is not necessary. You can get rid of it by right-clicking and hitting uncheck, or you uncheck group by type, and that little heading will go away. Then finally, we want to be able to see the color that it's going to mark on the drawing, and there's a little vertical line here that separates the number field from the name field. If you just drag that over a little ways, you'll see the colors start to appear. And we can even, this is probably good for now. You know, the wider you can make this window, the better, because then you'll see more of the description. That'll work pretty well now. Again, this is not a high resolution screen, it's a laptop. You want to get up more into the 2000 by 1080, or I guess it's 1920 by 1080 resolution or higher, and then you'll have a lot more territory here on the screen to work with. But this will work fine for our webinar here today. Okay, so I think that's all we're going to need to do as far as setup. The next time we come in here, we'll bring in a job and show you how to navigate. So make sure the image or the condition window is set up so you can see the colors, you can see the counts. You can do that by just dragging around these little vertical lines to make it fit. And the last thing again was to link the database under File and Open. Make sure it's checked for 2018. Okay, any questions about the setup before we actually go do a real job? Okay. So what I'm going to do is close OST. I'm going to go back into EBM and start a new job. And we'll just call this OST webinar. We'll hit OK. So now it's just pretty much going to be doing the defaults. You come down to Tools and hit Export to On-Screen Takeoff. We'll talk about this window again a little bit later, so just hit OK. You'll see the setup we just did. You hit Export on the bottom right, hit OK. Just a reminder that OST needs to be closed before you go to the next step, and then you just hit Save. So this part you have to do on every time you create a new job, but you can see it only takes maybe way less than a minute. So now when we open up OST at the end of this, another way to do it, instead of clicking on your taskbar, you can also just hit Import on the taskbar on EBM, and that'll open up OST because it's not running. So there's the new job. I'm going to double click on it. So at this point, you would have downloaded your drawings onto somewhere on your system. It probably should be normally be your local drive, but it could be a network drive. And then you're going to go up here to this little button called Cover Sheet. And what we see here is the name of the job that's highlighted right here. The job number, that's the EBM job number. That's the estimator who's logged in. And you come down here and you can either use this button to add all of the images that are in a particular file or folder, or you can do them one by one. Now if I go here to Image File and hit this little button for the search option, so I'm going to bring in, there's one under the EBM folder in Vision. Good one to start with. It's under this OST folder. We're going to bring in the one E30119, that's a power plan. You just hit open. And we'll add one more page. Now the way you'll normally get these, you'll have one PDF file that needs to be extracted and it will do that automatically. But for now we're just going to use these two. We're going to use this one because it's a reflected ceiling plan. So I've got a power plan and a lighting plan. I'm going to hit OK. So let's talk for just a minute about navigation. There's a lot of ways to navigate around the screen. Probably the easiest one is this tool at the top, the zoom tool, this little plus sign that zooms in every time you click it. And the one to the left zooms out. That's pretty self-explanatory. Anytime you've zoomed in and you want to go back to the full page, this one just to the left of it zooms to full page. So that's zoom in. Right next to it is zoom out, and this is full page. Now, to move around the drawing, there's a couple ways to do it. This pan window is kind of handy because all you do is drag that black box to wherever you want to go. It just shifts your location on the drawings. There's also scroll bars at the bottom and the side. And then you can use this little pan tool up here just to drag the drawing itself. Or if you hold your right mouse button down, that'll let you move the drawing around. So different ways to move around. And again, depending on your resolution, depending on the size of the drawing, you can zoom in as much as you need to. The other tool that's very handy is this zoom tool. So let's say I'm looking at this electric room here and I want to zoom in on it. There's two ways to do it. When you click the zoom tool, you can just start clicking with your mouse and it'll zoom in at increments till you get to where you want to be. The other way to use that, if I go use the full page button, I can use the zoom tool to rope an area. So I'm just dragging my mouse diagonally. You'll see it draws a little box, and when you let up on the mouse, there you go. Okay, so that's enough about the basic tools. Let's talk about setting the scale and checking the scale now before you start the takeoff. The scale defaults to 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. You can see that over here above the pan window, or you can see it on the cover sheet. There's a little drop down here on the setup screen to pick the scale. So this drawing is supposed to be 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. So the next thing we need to do, another way to zoom in, is to hold the control button down on the keyboard and use your mouse to zoom in. Now there unfortunately aren't any dimensions in this drawing, so we're going to have to maybe use a door opening that would typically be 3 feet to check the scale. So this is the dimension tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. I'm just going to click at one edge of the door jamb, come down to the other. So when I let up on the mouse here, it says that opening is 4 feet, which we know is probably not right. So to fix it, you just come up here to Edit, Calculate Scale. Now, this is one of the strangest things about this program. Every time you put in a dimension like 3 feet, you have to add 2 extra zeros. Think of it as 3 feet, 0 inches. If it was 3 feet, 6 inches, it would be 306. Okay, we're leaving it 300. And we need to get this window out of the way, so I'm going to drag it down here. And then you just do basically the same thing. You drag where the dimension starts, drag it down to where it ends, and let up in the mouse. And then it recalculates down here in the bottom the scale, which is now 1 inch equals 6 feet and a little bit more. For 1/8 inch, it would have said 1 inch equals 8 feet. So now we fixed the scale. Close enough. The good thing to remember is that as long as you catch the scale correction before you leave the drawing, you're fine. Even if you've measured everything on the drawing, it'll fix the links. It'll fix the dimensions automatically as long as you catch it at some point. Okay, so I'm going to zoom to full page. I'm going to use the zoom tool to zoom in on the top left part of the building by drawing a box around it. And I'm going to start counting these receptacles. So over here under EBM database in the condition window, you open up that folder, go to Assemblies, go to Receptacles, Flush, and Wood or Metal Stud, and then go to Duplex. So down here near the bottom is a 20 amp spec gray with a plastic plate. Now you just single click on it for now. We'll come back later and show you why you would double click if you want to change the size or color or even the shape. But for now I can just start counting. You see how my mouse is across here now? I just click on the receptacles and you should even hear it makes an audio clicking sound. So now at any point you want to stop counting the duplex receptacles and count something else, you can just move back over to the condition window. So I'm going to close that folder because you can see it gets kind of spread out here. I'm going to go down to the GFI folder. Here's a 20 amp spec gray with a plastic plate. I'm going to click on that one and that one. And down here are the quads. 20 amp spec gray plastic plate. We'll take off a few of those. Okay, so at any point you want to stop counting and bring back what you've done into EBM, you just toggle back into EBM. I've got it in my taskbar down here at the bottom. If you're not on the import window, click the import button. If you're already on the import button window, you can just hit refresh. So everything comes into EBM into this little import, I called it the spreadsheet. So there's everything we just took off. Now it's actually not in the takeoff yet. It's not in the audit trail until you tell it to go ahead and finalize these entries. You can do them one at a time by highlighting it and hitting F2 takeoff. In this case, I want to do them all at the same time, so I just highlight all 3 lines, and then you hit F2 takeoff. I guess I missed it. We'll do it again. So those 3 assemblies are in the audit trail. They're going to look just like they would have if you put it in through the normal takeoff mode. If you go to Reports and Audit Trail, there's my 3 entries. Now before I go back to OST, I like to be on the import window so that I don't have to toggle back to there when it comes back with my next entries. So I'm going to go back into OST. So we've set the scale. Let's say I want to do some measuring now. We'll come back and do some other things with counting in a minute. But let's say I want to measure this home run from the air handler unit. I'll zoom in just a little bit. That's a 60 amp disconnect, and it goes back to panel PP2 up here in the electric room. So to do a measurement assembly, that's one of the saved assemblies. So you right click on the condition window and collapse it. Come down to the saved assemblies, under branch, EMT set screw steel stranded wire, and we'll do 1 inch with 3 6s and a 10. So to measure, you just hold the mouse button, your left mouse button down and drag it to the point where you want to change directions. When you let up, it gives you a prompt for a drop or riser. It doesn't see verticals. We're gonna put the drop at the end of the run. So when I take from that end point over to the panel and let up, I'm going to add 10 feet. So it's 10, 0, 0. Now before I hit enter, right now I'm at 48 feet. When I hit enter, it'll bump it up to 58. Now the next line down is to count runs. If I had multiple runs of that 1 inch conduit with 3 number 6s and a 10, I could count them at this point. We're going to do something with the smaller size of conduit here. So I'm going to run these receptacles in 3/4 inch EMT with number 12 wire. So you'll see that's a little ways down here. So I'm just going to click at my starting point. Now you don't have to stop at each receptacle unless you're going to put a drop or a riser there. Okay, so now I've got 86 feet. Now to count those 3 runs electronically, you click on the next line down. Just click anywhere in that segment between the 2 outlets. You'll see it makes a little mark there and there. So now that's a total of 3 runs for 86 feet. So to take those 2 entries back to EBM again, you just toggle back into EBM. You hit refresh at the bottom of the spreadsheet. Now, if you want to review an entry, like this 1-inch EMT with 3 6s and a 10, I want to take a look at that before I finalize it. When you double click on it, it takes you into the Takeoff module that you would normally do it manually. So it fills in the length, it fills in the runs. We're going to put in 3 elbows, and we're going to change this from a field bend, from a factory elbow to a field bend. I'll leave the supports and fittings there. We'll just hit F2 Takeoff. 10 feet of makeup wire. Now, if it's something a little more routine like this 3/4 inch with 3/12, you don't have to review it. You can just highlight it and hit Takeoff. You'll see the screen go by, but it just doesn't stop. So, if you're into a bigger job, you might have, a full page of items here. You can just highlight them and hit Takeoff and let it go to it. Okay, so let's go back to OST. So the next thing I want to show you is how to deal with things that aren't in this Takeoff window. I'm going to collapse it. A good example you'll see on this part of the drawing, there's this S with an M is actually not just a motor rated switch. On the specs, he calls for an enclosed manual starter. So that's a lot different item. Now, if it's not in the database that you've exported here, you just simply add it with a little plus sign. And we're going to change the style to account. And I'm just going to type in manual starter. Now, what you type in here can be helpful because the program can search on that text without you having to retype it. Now, the default is a width, so it's a 1x1 box of 1 foot. You can leave the pink there. You can change the colors. We'll do that in a minute. But now I just click where those starters are. Now, you can see that's kind of small. If you just double click on it here, might want to change that to 2 feet, which is 200, and hit OK. Now let's pretend there's some widgets in the warehouse, just something that's going to end up as a temporary item. It's the same idea. You add with the plus sign. You can make it a count. You can type in widget. We're going to make it a little bigger. And we'll just pretend there's some imaginary widgets out here. So let me show you one more thing here. Let's say that again, we're going to pretend there's a time clock down here in the little boiler mechanical room. So I'm going to hit the plus sign again to add that. Shortcut here is I can hit the C on the keyboard and then just tab to the next field. And we're going to type in Intermatic ET series time clock ET8. Now again, I'm gonna leave it. I'll make it a little bit bigger, 200. We'll hit OK, and we're gonna put it right next to the panel here. Okay, so these are all items that we added on the fly that weren't part of what we exported, and they're pretty easy to deal with. When we go back into EBM on the spreadsheet, we hit refresh. So let's do the manual starter first because I'm pretty sure that's in the database. I can search for it. The EBM search button is down here at the bottom now. You can search on description. And right there's a NEMA single pole toggle manual starter with a NEMA 1 enclosure. We'll just double click it. There's the quantity. So the widget I'm going to add is a quick temp miscellaneous item. When you double click on an item that doesn't have a number or a condition assigned to it, it'll bring you to the list of all the places you can go in EBM. So here's quick temp miscellaneous. We can leave the price and labor open. We'll just hit F2 Takeoff and then that item's done. Now the time clock, I put that in because I want to show you how to pull an item out of Epic. Again, when you double click, this time you would go to temporary miscellaneous. That's where you go to pull items from Epic. We're going to hit import at the bottom. We're going to go to manufacturer lookup, to I for Intermatic, double click there. So I'm going to use the catalog number lookup over here on the left. And when I type in ET8, it gives me a list of some time clocks. I'm going to pick this last one here since it's the most expensive, and I'm going to export it. This third button on the toolbar at the top right is the export. And it fills everything in except labor, but it's going to leave it checked as open, so it'll remind me later. So those last three items, the manual starter, was not in the condition window. These three items here, we all added on the fly. So again, you don't need everything up in the top part here. It's probably better if you can keep that to a minimum and then of the things you use the most. Okay, a couple more quick things before we leave this screen. If you want to continue counting duplex receptacles, for example, there's a lot more on the page. You don't have to find it again. You hit this little arrow called the select arrow. You click on one of them you've already counted. And then you hit the space bar on the keyboard, and you'll see then the mouse turns into a crosshair. So you can just continue counting. Now I'm going to make a mistake. Oh, I just made two mistakes. Here's one way to fix it. Those two quad receptacles, you can hit the back arrow, and it'll erase your last two steps. I'm going to leave one of them in. I'll show you what happens if you catch the mistake after the fact. Okay, let's count some more quad receptacles. Again, the shortcut is to hit the select arrow, click on one of the quad receptacles you've already counted, hit the space bar, and you can count some more of those. So to bring that stuff back that I just did, I'm going to go to the taskbar and click on EBM. I'm going to click on refresh, and we're going to click on this line and this line. Now at this point it's going to make two separate entries. It's going to add the 13 duplexes and the 4 quads, and it'll make 2 more entries in the audit trail, but then it'll give you a total here. So this screen is always going to show you the total for that page. So back into OST now. So I see my mistake here. This, where's the one I just messed up? There, this one right here. That should have been a duplex. Again, you can hit the select arrow. You can drag your mouse over it. Now you see it makes a little box in the middle of it. You can either right click on it and hit delete, or you can come up to the red X at the top and hit delete. So what happens in EBM now is it brings that in as a minus quantity when you hit refresh. It's going to delete that item. There's the -1 right here. We just hit F2 takeoff. And here's the other neat little tool in OST. Let's say I want to change these GFI receptacles to have a stainless steel plate instead of a plastic one. What you do first of all is you click on it, the one you're going to change. Then in the condition window here, you hit Select Objects. So it'll highlight everything on that page that was taken off as that assembly. And then you just go to the one you want to substitute with it. You right click on this one right below it, and you go up to Reassign Objects. Gives you a confirmation that you're changing it from one with a plastic to all with stainless steel plates. Now what happens in EBM again, it's got to fix that when you hit refresh. It's going to add 2 and subtract 2. So again, you can just highlight both lines and hit F2 takeoff. One last thing before we go on to the next page. I'm going to hit the full page button. You can put a legend on the drawing. I think this is really handy. It's the last button on the toolbar over here on the right. And it puts it up at the top left. If you don't like that, you can move it. You can drag it anywhere you want. And you can also make the text bigger. Maybe you want to make it 16 or 18 on the font size. So when you print this page, either to a printer or a plotter, it's going to look exactly like what you see on the screen here. So your electricians in the field can see your counts. They can even see how you routed your conduits, if it's a feeder or a home run. You'll see how you routed your conduits there. Okay, so any questions before we go to the next page? I guess there's one other button I wanted to show you. I'm going to go to full page. I like to use the highlighter button. Maybe I wanted to highlight that I read these notes, even though I didn't. Okay, two ways to get to the next page. You can either use this little arrow here that's next to the page number above the pan window, or hit the little drop down and it'll show you all the pages. So this page is a good one to show you two things with fixtures. One is the auto count, which can save you a lot of time if you've got a nice clean set of drawings. And the other is how to take off fixtures. Now, if I right click and collapse my condition window, under saved assemblies, I've got the fixture assemblies here. Now I could use this straight, do a regular takeoff like I did with the other items, but it wouldn't know a type A from a type B from a type C. It also wouldn't know what accessories I want to include. So I'm going to set up these three fixtures. This is a recessed downlight here. We've got some 2x2 lay-ins, and you'll see some ceiling fans up here. I'm going to set those up in EBM before I come back and do the takeoff. So when I go to fixtures, type A is going to be the recessed LED. I'll put a fixture whip with it. Now, here's the kind of strange thing. You actually go ahead and hit takeoff, even though the quantity is not filled in, because that saves fixture A. You just hit leave as is. Fixture B is going to be a 2x2 LED lay-in. And again, I'll add a fixture whip. And then we're going to hit takeoff and leave as is. Now for the ceiling fan, there's no saved assembly for that. So I'm going to go to description, ceiling fans. I'll do the first one. I'm going to put an LED lamp in it. And I'm going to put a fixture fan box here. So I'm going to go to select items, outlet boxes, fan box. And I'll hit takeoff on that. So I just created three new fixtures. You have to do that whether you did it electronically or manually. You've got to tell every job what a type A is, what a type B is, what a type C is. But now I can send those three fixtures over into OST by going to Tools, and Export. So this is where this little window comes into play that I mentioned earlier. If you uncheck the first box, it'll speed up the export because the database is already there. All the items and assemblies that you normally need are already there. We just need to add these three new items. So we're going to hit OK. I've already closed OST. No, I didn't. So I'm going to close OST and hit OK. It doesn't hurt if you leave it open. It just won't appear in the condition window until you close it and reopen it again. So now we're going to hit OK. We're going to reopen OST. So that's the job we were working in. When you double click, it'll bring you back to the same screen, the same part of the job. Now, I'm going to use the auto count here. So I'm going to zoom in really pretty far on one of these items I want it to try to take off. So that's under Tools. Down here to auto count. Oh, why didn't it bring that up? That's the first time I've seen that not appear. So let's close OST and reopen it. So we're going to go to Tools. And I can't tell you why auto count is grayed out. First time I've ever seen that grayed out. Now it's on the toolbar here on the right too, but it's grayed out there. So let's try closing OST. Let's try closing EBM. Close Epic. Start EBM back up. Start OST back up. Under Tools, Auto Count is still grayed out. I guess the only other thing I can think of is that somehow I turned off the auto count. Let me just bring in a new page, see if it likes that. I'll go back to the previous one. Nope. Probably the only way to fix this auto count is to restart my computer, and that won't work here since that will end the webinar. So I guess I'm just going to have to recommend that you check out one of the recorded webinars if you want to see the auto count feature, or you can call in and we can show it to you over the internet. But I don't think there's any other way to restart my computer here, and I don't know what happened in the setup there. It got me on this one. I apologize. That was the last thing I was going to show you was the auto count, but we can do the manual count. If we go to Takeoff Assemblies, here's Type A. Now, the color it picked is pretty bad. So I'm going to double click here and change the color to something brighter. I see what happened. Boy, I've never done it that way. I hadn't picked anything to count. That's why the auto count didn't work. So I'm going to zoom in a little more. I'm going to go to Tools and Auto Count. So what you do now is you draw a box around the symbol that you want it to search for on the drawing. So I'm roping it, drawing a box around it. Now you want to try to get it as tight and well-centered as you can. This little erase button would let you erase these little specks on the ceiling, but probably not going to matter. I'm going to start with the sensitivity level right here in the middle. So it counted 50 of those. If it had counted something that it shouldn't have, I could uncheck it, but for now I'll just hit Accept Count and go to full page because I want to look to see if it missed anything. Which if I zoom in just a little bit, you'll see that it missed these 4 here. So to manually count those, I hit the space bar once to take me out of the auto count, hit it again to count, to go back into the manual count. Now here's something to watch out for. This drawing has a legend with the same symbol up here, so of course it counted it. And remember to delete, you hit the select arrow, drag your mouse over it, and then hit the red X, or you can right click and hit delete. Okay, so the next one is this fixture B. I'm going to go to full page. I'm going to zoom in on one of the fixture Bs. I like the zoom tool. That's the 2x2 lay-in. So the other way to activate the auto count is on the toolbar here that looks like a little binocular. You're going to draw a box around it. We're going to search. So it found 21 of those. We're going to hit Accept Count. Go to full page. Now I know again that it counted the one up in the legend here, but I'm going to leave it there for now because I'm going to come back and delete the fan at the same time. Let's pick a different color for the fan. Let's go to something bright. So again, to change the color, size, or shape, you double click on it. That's the size, that's the color, and the shape is over here. Why don't we change that to round just to be different. And again, we're going to find one to zoom in on. When you're using the auto count before you actually rope or draw a box around the item, the farther zoomed in you are, typically the better. So I'm going to activate the auto count and draw a box around that ceiling fan and tell it to search. It found 9. They all look valid, so I'll hit accept count and I'll go to full page. So another thing to watch out for in the auto count feature is that if there's a different background from the one that you actually selected to search on, it may not find it. So again, I'm hitting the space bar twice. I'm going to manually count those two. Then I come up here to the legend. So to delete more than one item, use the select arrow again. You can draw a box around it and hit delete. Again, if you wanted to delete, let's say, these 4 fixtures up here, you draw a box around them, hit delete. Now there's also an undo button again, which I showed you earlier, so undo will put those 4 back in. There's my counts, 53, 20, and 10. When we go back to EBM, we're in the import spreadsheet, so we hit refresh. So the cool thing is these fixtures are all set up and ready to go. You can highlight all 3, hit F2 takeoff, and then go right into the job. So it might seem like a little bit of setup time is, necessary, but it's the same setup time you'd have to do otherwise. You'd have to set up each fixture, but then it's quick and easy to take them off, and they're all done. Okay, sorry about that little glitch on my end. I didn't notice that the auto count wasn't being activated because I hadn't selected something to count. Got to actually select something here. That makes sense. Here's full page. So I think that's going to wrap it up. Let me take one more look for questions on my control panel. I'm just going to take 1 minute here to tell you about what the other options for training are here at Vision. In addition to these webinars, which are free, we have 3 other types of hands-on training where you're running the computer, not watching somebody else. You can purchase additional one-on-one online training over the internet. So you're at your desk running your software at your computer. We just link in over the internet so we can see your screen and set up an audio connection. We also offer on-site training where we can come to your office or you can come to ours. That could be 1 or 2 days or more. It could be introductory, it can be advanced, it could be for multiple people. Sometimes that's a good training option if you have more than one person to train and different programs that need to be addressed and maybe you need to customize some things. We also offer classroom training. We have introductory classes you can see there. We have advanced classes. You can purchase an individual one-on-one session on the on-screen takeoff if you want. So I think that's going to wrap it up here. I appreciate you attending the webinar here today. So thanks again.